Hey everybody, welcome to Right On, the podcast from Final Draft. This is the show where we talk about all things screenwriting. Today we have an interview with Tracy Scott Wilson, screenwriter of the recent Aretha Franklin biopic, Respect.
How many albums have you had?
4.
And no hits. Honey, find the songs that move you. Until you do that, you ain't going nowhere.
R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Find out what it means to me. R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Sing cat T-C-D.
Aretha, you do talk, don't you? Not just sing?
I like you to call me Miss Franklin. You have to disturb the peace when you can't get no peace.
R-E-S-P-E-C-T. Find out what it means to me.
Right On, Sade Sellers talked with Tracy about her relationship with Aretha Franklin's music, how she found her own voice as a writer, how she approaches deadlines, and more. Check it out.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Right On. Happy holidays to you. Before we end the year, I have a wonderful interview happening today with someone I'm really excited to meet, but also I'm excited to talk about this film, and I hope you all watch it during your holiday breaks. It's Respect, and I'm here with Tracy Scott Wilson. Hi, Tracy.
Hello, how are you?
Good. I'm going to do my best not to burst out into song, because ever since I've seen the movie, all I've been doing is singing songs.
Please do. Feel free.
No one wants to hear that in audio version. I don't have any auto tune or anything to help me. So we'll spare the listeners. We'll just talk about writing today. But first, I want to say congratulations to you and the team, because you are Grammy nominated as of today. Well, the film is.
Yes, just found out this afternoon. It's very excited for Jennifer and the whole team there. Yes, it's really exciting.
Award season is kicking in, and I have a sneaky suspicion that this is just the start of all the awards that will be coming.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. I mean, even without all of that, it is a sensational biopic. Biopics are so hard to do in general, but gosh, Aretha Franklin, talk about a life and so much to cover. So I first want to start at the beginning, and then I want to ask you more specific questions to the script. But how did you come to be attached to this project? Because I've read it was a long time in the making.
Yeah. So I came on when my good friend Lisa Tommy was on board. Lisa Tommy and I worked together in theater for many, many years. And she was hired to direct the movie. And she was hired about a year before she brought me on. They had another writer attached who got too busy. And when that writer left, she brought me on. And it was in May, and we were shooting in October. So that was a very short window of time. Which to do this, Aretha chose her. So she had been aboard for a very long time, but all the other pieces were not in place, and they needed a script in order to put those pieces in place. So it was a very chaotic and stressful, but ultimately very rewarding process.
Okay, I'm having a mini anxiety attack just thinking about an October deadline for a script that I just got attached to in May. So, wow, I need to know what's the first thing you did, knowing that you had this tight deadline.
Well, I began to live, breathe, eat Aretha 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I listened to nothing but her music. Everything I read was about her. I just completely submerged myself into the world. And they had a researcher who I could access anytime to ask for whatever materials. And I have to say that part was just, I love that part of it. You know, I just loved learning. I didn't know that much about her. I thought I did. And I think most people think that they do, but I didn't. And it was, so it was a revelation, and it was, that part was great. But then I had to actually sit down and write it, and that was a little more stressful.
Right. Yeah. I love the research phase too, because it gets you so excited. And then you're like, oh, right, I have to deliver pages, and I hate all of this right now.
Yeah.
You know, I have the earliest memories I have of listening to Aretha's music is my mother waking us up on Saturday morning to clean the house. I want to know what's your earliest memory you have, and if you remember what the first song you heard was.
I don't remember a moment in my life when I did not hear her music.
Right.
Because it was just so ubiquitous. It was just like, you know, I grew up in this pretty big house, and my grandparents were on the first floor, and me and my siblings and parents were on the second floor, and there was just constantly music, just constantly be playing between the two. But I had vivid memories of my grandmother playing the Amazing Grace album every Sunday.
Yep.
And she used to play James Cleveland constantly. And then upstairs, me and my siblings would just be everything, everything else in between. It was just so funny when that documentary came out, because I knew that album backwards and forwards.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you have your own vision of what it was. So to finally see it was really kind of very profound.
What, in the research mode, what was the most surprising thing you learned about Aretha?
I mean, I knew her father was a famous minister. I knew that, but I had no idea that she was surrounded by such musical royalty. Mm-hmm. Like, I had no idea that her and her siblings were just raised in such this sort of incredibly rarefied era of Black musical genius, and that these people were sort of coming to her house and just jamming and playing, and that her education, started at such a young age. I knew that she didn't read music, but I had no idea that she could, the first time she sat down to a piano at age 3, she just played what she heard. I didn't know about how talented her sisters were. I didn't know, just sort of how rich that family history was. That was a surprise, and something I love digging into. And also, I didn't know, it was just the complexity of her relationships with her sisters was just a revelation.
It's interesting when we lose these icons, how much, about their past is uncovered, and you go, yeah, I grew up with this music. Why didn't I know this about her? Mm. Especially with Aretha being, raised around the Detroit area, and I'm from Michigan. I go, well, I didn't know any of this. How did we not know this?
Yeah.
I thought this would be ingrained in me by now. But that's why I really enjoyed the biopic, right? I think what your biopic does really well is it's enough of what we know about her, older generations who grew up with her knew, but it's also a great introduction for newer generations who maybe don't know as much. And I watched it with my mom, and she would say, I remember that moment. I go, really? We've never talked about this. But there are moments in your film when she's like, I remember that specifically happening.
I mean, I feel like there's a great TV show just about Detroit during that time. Because it's like Diana Ross was her neighbor. Smokey Robinson was her brother's best friend.
Yeah.
They knew all of these guys. They were all in the neighborhood, and they were all just playing together as kids and grew up together. And Sam Cooke, was somebody who was basically an uncle to her. And so, there's a I don't know what was in the water then, in that
talent.
Pure
they
talent.
were sipping Detroit talent. So I want to go, okay, so we did the research mode. You've done all that you can. Now you're going to page. All right, let's talk about this. You're a screenwriter. I'm a screenwriter. I'm a terrible outliner, but I need to know what your process was piecing together this story. I need to know if you note carded it, if you did a corkboard. What did you do? Because looking at the amount of time you've had to cover, I was like, there had to have been some sort of organized board happening here.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. When Lisa got the job, her pitch was that it was two things. It was, how does the woman with the greatest voice of all time find her own voice? And she knew she wanted to follow from age 10 up into the Amazing Grace album, her age 30, her best-selling album. So luckily I had those parameters to work with. And yes, I actually do use outlines, but, very loose outlines, right? My outlines in my chicken scratch that I understand. But of course, studios, they're not having that. So
no, that doesn't work.
Yeah. There were many, 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 many outlines before I was set off the script. Many, many, many. And I'm the same with you. Outlining is just, it's like fake writing, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it's like, sometimes you just like, you're not even sure that it's that scene's going to stay, but you just have to put it for the moment, because for the read, it's like you're outlining for the read as opposed to for yourself. I sort of kept two outlines, one for myself and one for the studio read.
I think that's very smart. And that's actually what I do too. Because the note, they just want it in there. And then, as the writer, you're like, it's not going to work. I'm already saying there's already too much, but let me go ahead and just show you. We should probably not be endorsing this to younger screenwriters, but you did, it worked. And now you have the film is amazing. So it worked out well.
Well, thank you.
What do the studio notes look like though? for someone who's lived a life who was also already attached to the project before they passed, like what kind of notes are they giving you?
Aretha, she gave no parameters before she died. I think she just wanted her story to be out there because she was such a private person, and she never spoke. And I think this movie gave her an opportunity to speak without actually having to say it. So luckily, we didn't have any of those sort of restrictions. So all the notes were, about story, about pacing, one of the earlier notes I got was because, I worked for TV for a long time and obviously theater and stuff like that. But, being on a TV show, especially in the Americans, there was a lot of interior scenes,
Yeah.
And doing some early drafts, I didn't have anyone outside for 6 scenes. And the producer was like, this is not a play. You got to get us outside. You got to
go outside.
You got to get us in another environment. You got to get us, and so that was sort of a big lesson. Really understanding the visual part of the storytelling and learning lessons more.
Was there a time either when you were working on Americans or with this film in particular where you got a note and you had to say no, or you knew it was I don't want to say bad notes, but just as the wrong note to give? And then how did you handle that?
Yeah, that did happen a couple of times. Luckily, I would consult with Liesl, and because we were friends and because we were on the same page artistically, we would, fight those battles together. Mm-hmm. But it was just about having a constant sort of conversation, explaining why this was important, and sometimes having to explain the cultural significance of a beat and why that is important. And, so it was a lot of sort of defending the story, defending the vision, but also, sort of being open to listening because, there were also good notes in there. Having those notes challenge us really helped us. It really helped me to understand what the story I wanted to tell. It really helps you to, as you know, it just helps you to focus on what it is that you really do want to say. Right. And, I'm not afraid to kill my darlings, but you're going to have to show me why I have to kill that darling,
Right. Exactly. And I love what you said earlier or the director had the theme of how does the woman with the most powerful voice in history find her voice? So I want to ask you, how did you find your writing voice that made you stand out for other writers?
Oh, that's such a great question. I found it over time. I found it through trial and error. I found it through, just writing, especially, sort of in theater, great thing about, writing in theater is that you're not alone. You have actors, you have people who could sort of read it out loud to you. And through that, I started to develop understanding my style and my voice. The stuff that I wrote very early on is just, as I'm sure was same with you, it's just so different from the way I write now. And it's just a constantly evolving process. And I think it's still evolving because, this is my first movie. I hope to write many, many more. And I know one thing, this movie I wrote, when I wrote it, it was too long, and I'm not going to do that next time. But hopefully next time I write a movie, I'll have a longer period of time to write it.
Right.
But I just think that part of the beauty of writing is that you evolve with it. As you change, your writing changes, because what's the most important thing is you being in touch with your feelings and having that and conveying that honesty and conveying that passion through the writing. So as you change, your writing changes, and I'm happy with that.
I think that's definitely true, especially when I go back and read some old drafts of mine. I go, wow, you thought you were a good writer.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Successfully, people gave you a chance because what is this? After all of the notes and, you have a locked script, what do you do? And you pouring yourself a glass of wine and are you just sending it off into the fray, praying that it's enough? Like what is your post I finished this 4-month execution of a biopic?
Well, there was actually no official locked moment. I was literally rewriting up until the last day of shooting. It was just constant. It was constant. I'd be writing the day before shooting, or especially and a lot on the weekends and things like that. So it was a constantly changing process, and so it really was locked the last day of shooting.
Oh, wow.
And what I did...
It was really locked when it's in theaters now. We're now
That's right. There was a cast party. And we finished shooting in New York, actually the last day, which was really beautiful to shoot at the Woolworth building. in New York. And we started shooting in the first shot we did was in New York, and then we ended in New York. And it was really nice to be back home for that. And it was, and we finished 3 weeks before shutdown.
Oh, wow.
And it was freezing that day, but we just went to a cast party, and it was just very, had a couple of drinks, and it was just surreal because we had a rap party in Atlanta, and then to have another one here. So it was surreal. And then, just crazy stuff was going on in the world. We weren't sure what was happening with this thing called COVID. And
yeah,
I don't know that I ever sort of had that champagne official popping moment, really. And
well, you should do it now for the Grammys. You definitely should.
Well, the premiere was definitely a celebration. That was a definite celebration. Yeah.
I believe you can learn a lesson from anything you do, and I want to know what your biggest lesson as a screenwriter you feel was during this process. It's something that you picked up on. You're like, I need to take this forward with me now everywhere I go.
Another great question. Oh man, writers ask great questions.
Yeah, I'm your writing therapist. I'm getting deep because I'm really interested. I biopics to me are the most fascinating genre to attack because it's a true story, and it's like your perception of it. If you get it wrong, you're going to piss off someone. And if you get it right, it's just a rare thing that I think you did a wonderful job. So I'm just, I'm really asking these questions for myself. And I'm new to the guys of the podcast.
Well, I'll tell you, in many ways, writing it in such a short period of time ended up being a blessing because I couldn't be precious about it. At a certain point, you just have to have some words on a page so that the production designer can figure out how many sets they need, how many standing sets they need. And so instead of sort of agonizing over, this word isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right, just writing it, just getting it done, just getting it down. And I believe that I've taken that lesson with me, that this is not the final. Yeah. It's gonna keep going, it's gonna keep evolving, and just to ignore that nagging voice that comes in your head constantly that tells you you're a fraud, that tells you can't do this, that tells you this is impossible, that tells you all the bad things. Fear took over and told the other voice to shut up. So now I just have learned to sort of ignore that voice more.
I'm actually going through that right now because I don't have a deadline for the project I'm writing because it's mine. And what you said really resonates because I'm just so fearful that it's not going to be good that I am kind of just, tinkering around. And I like that you said, having a firm deadline made you really just put words in the page. So I need to take that with me as well. But I want to know, Tracy, okay, the film is out. People love it. It's getting great reviews. It's nominated for a Grammy and soon to follow more awards. What is next up for you? If you can tell us. Not sure if you can.
Well, I have an overall deal at FX, and I'm just developing pilots with them.
Yes, and I'm Motown pilot for Detroit. There you go.
You know what? Let me call them up right now.
Right.
No, I'm just on the hunt. So for my next movie, I'm really honored that I got to tell this story of my first movie, and I'm dying to run another one.
You could have been the screenwriter for any film from the beginning of time. Which one would have been?
Oh man, you mean like if somebody was like, if you could put your name on any script that already exists in the world?
Yep. Yeah.
Oh my God! Wow, that is an amazing question.
Mine would be Jurassic Park. I think it's fabulous.
That's fun. That is fun, and the first one, right?
Yes, the first one, especially.
You know what I would have to say? I'd have to say between two of them, Chinatown or Rosemary's Baby.
Oh, you picked, okay. I said Jurassic Park and you give me Chinatown and Rosemary Baby. Yeah. So I feel like, I definitely feel like an idiot now. Like those are good choices. Those are really good choices. Rosemary Baby, especially. Like, this is brilliantly done. One last question for you, because this has been a really great, I was really looking forward to interviewing you, and now I'm just so fulfilled. You answered every question beautifully. This question we ask all of our guests on the podcast. It's slightly different when I asked you before, so take a moment if you need. But I want to know, what advice would you offer your younger writer self? So like maybe Tracy 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 5 years ago even, but what advice you in the present had to offer for your younger self?
Well, it's funny. I just got asked that question a while back. And I think I would tell myself, with my younger self, don't get caught up in the reviews.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get caught up in any of that. Focus on the work. And, good reviews could be as crippling as bad reviews.
That's true.
And I heard Maya Angelou give this advice one time. If you don't put them up, you don't have to put them down.
I love it.
So that's what I would tell my younger self. Don't pick it up, good or bad, and you don't have to put it down. Just keep working. Just keep writing.
I love that because let me tell you, audiences are fickle. They'll hate you now and then 5 years to say, we underrated that masterpiece. Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Exactly.
We're definitely seeing it now. But Tracy, thank you so much for stopping by the Right On podcast today. Sensational biopic and outstanding to talk to you. What you did in the amount of time that you had is inspirational. And I think all screenwriters listening to this will feel a little bit more better about what they're doing in their everyday life, hopefully. So it's been a pleasure speaking with you, and good luck during award season, because I just know it's coming. I know it's going to come, and I look forward to seeing you on the screen and cheering. I know her-ish, kind of.
Well, best of luck with your writing, and just keep doing it. Ignore that voice. Ignore that voice.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks to Tracy Scott Wilson for coming on the show. You can rent Respect on VOD platforms right now. And as always, thanks to you, our listeners. If you liked this episode, leave us a review. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. For news about new episodes and more, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Final Draft Inc., and on Instagram at Final Draft Screenwriting. This podcast was produced by Kayla Guess and co-produced by Emma Vranich. Editing is by Sean Bonnet. Music is by T. Kelly. Thanks again, everyone. Until next time, right on.